We caught the 15-hour flight from Newark to Delhi after we were already tired from traveling across the United States. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight? Not possible. This map of India shows our journey from Delhi all the way to Leh, the capital of Ladakh. After spending the night in Delhi, we hit the road and head toward the Ladakhi part of Kashmir. After 2 days of travel by car from Delhi, we reach Shimla in the foothills of the Himalayas. Our long journey to India is officially over, and our vacation begins. In 1864, Shimla was declared the summer capital of British India. Government business was conducted here in the hotter months. We take time to relax here in this beautiful city surrounded by forests and perched on the steep hillsides. Our comfortable hotel has views over the valleys of this amazing city. We had to laugh when looking out the window and we saw this notice about monkey mischief in the area. In the center of old downtown, Mall Road is blocked to traffic and is a great place to stroll and take in the local sights. Cell phones in India are reliable and not expensive, so many people are able to afford the service. It was here that we noticed many young children dressed in costume walking down the road with their parents. We asked some of the parents if we could photograph their children and found that they were all on their way to put on a performance at the local church. They were all so adorable, and we had so much fun interacting with the parents and their children. We were lucky to have been in the right place at the right time. We followed them into the church and waited for the show to begin. We watched the first performance by a group of little angels dressed in white. So cute. Leaving Shimla on the narrow mountain roads, we make our way toward Manali. It is a harrowing all-day drive of 245 kilometers, with heavy traffic much of the way. Our driver had a small, solar-powered prayer wheel on his dashboard, sending prayers out as we traveled these dangerous roads. Oops, I don't know what happened. Behavior, get it moving again.
Sunlight light.
Yes. Hey now.
Once you start moving, then you can take chances.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Oh, look at it. We get to move.
There we go. Prayers are going up.
Now you can pass. And
Good travel day. Yep. Through the tunnel. We made several stops to take a break from driving. Many of the transport trucks are decorated with drawings and sometimes prayers. Truck drivers expose themselves to danger every day driving these roads, and I guess this driver needed some extra protection. It made me feel a bit uneasy when I climbed back into the car to continue our journey, but our driver's prayer wheel was at work, protecting us on the road. We stopped to admire the view at this waterfall and ran into some fellow travelers who had also taken a break here. After a long and tiring day, we arrive in beautiful Manali, our home, for the next 2 nights. The next morning after arriving in Manali, Tom woke up with a very painful back problem. It was time to visit a doctor to see if he could get some help with the pain. Our guide was very helpful in arranging a visit to the local hospital to see the orthopedic physician. The waiting room was full of interesting people, patiently waiting for their appointments with the doctor. We sat there feeling a little out of place, not knowing what would come next, but enjoying watching the people. A beautiful young mother was holding her sleeping baby. We admired her child, and she allowed us to take some photos. When the baby awoke, she handed him to Tom so he could hold him. This was a privilege that he thoroughly enjoyed. Tom's name was called, and we entered an already crowded exam room. The doctor asked a few questions about Tom's condition, while everyone in the room tried not to watch. It was an interesting experience. The doctor visit was over, and then it was time to join the line to pay and fill your prescriptions. Total cost of visit and medications? Around $6 US. Manali is a hill station nestled in the mountains and surrounded by thick pinewood forests near the northern end of the Kulu Valley, at an elevation of 6,726 feet. It is so beautiful here, I can hardly believe my eyes. The Bees River divides the town in half on the narrow valley floor, but 2 bridges spanning the river, designed for vehicle traffic, connect the town. Several footbridges also span the river so people can easily move from one part of town to the other. Some of these looked a bit rickety but were safe to cross as long as you watched out for the holes. So there I was, taking photos with my camera of sheep grazing along the banks of the river, with the shepherds watching over them, when much to my surprise, I saw tourist monks grabbing photos with their tablets. I don't know why, but it seemed rather amusing to me. Somehow I never thought of monks as tourists, especially with tablets. The Kulu Valley is blessed with ample rain, and flowers were blooming everywhere, as the life-giving rain keeps the area lush and green. An important source of income in the area are the thriving commercial apple orchards. Apples that grow here are shipped all over India and were introduced into this region under British rule. Tourism is also an important source of income, and Manali becomes crowded with vacationers during the summer months. Street photography is always fun, as I try to capture some of the activity around me. It is not unusual to see the odd cow or calf crossing bridges or strolling down streets. School children returning home after a day at school. And a woman trying to pay attention to her husband, who seems to be telling her something important. All part of daily life, captured with my camera. Next I set out to explore the surrounding area, and found an old village nearby where the houses had been built in the traditional style. The architectural style of wooden beams, combined with stone layers and a slate roof, is very attractive and also practical. This method of construction makes the buildings resistant to earthquake movement, and they have stood for many years. Village life went on quietly around me as I wandered through the paths of this small village. I love how some of the doorways are decorated with simple designs. I just love doorways. The people of the Kulu Valley practice Hinduism, and many small Hindu shrines dot the area. The Hindu religion originated in India thousands of years ago. To people raised in other faiths, Hinduism may seem very complex, but the core beliefs are actually quite simple to understand. For example, Hindus believe there is only one supreme being, Brahman. They pursue knowledge of truth and reality, they strive for moral order and right action, and they promote tolerance. Hindus worship a variety of gods and goddesses who personify aspects of Brahman. The Kulu folk, as they are called in India, are independent and have been isolated for many years. Their name for themselves roughly translates to people at the end of the world. The Kulu Valley is the last stop before the journey begins over the passes of the Himalayas to reach Ladakh. Ancient trade routes across the mountains to Ladakh begin here in the Kulu Valley. These ancient trails are now used for trekking, and many treks begin from here. Beyond Manali, the road through the Himalaya mountains climbs steeply to the Rohtang Pass. The scenery is unbelievably stunning as we climb the mountain road. We pause often to try to capture some of the beauty. It takes 4 to 6 hours to ascend, negotiate, and descend the Rohtang Pass. Up, up, up we go. It's exciting, it's thrilling, and a little bit dangerous. It's like nothing you've ever experienced before in the good old USA. The ascent is on a narrow road with dangerous drop-offs, clogged with traffic, animals, and people. Traffic jams are common as military vehicles, trucks, and goods carriers navigate the tight roads and rough terrain. Sections of the road are constantly being repaired during the 4 to 5 months per year that the road is open, due to the damage done to the road by the long winters. By July of 2018, this passage over the Rohtang Pass will become a choice and not a necessity as it is now. Due to the military significance of the highway, the Indian government is building the 5.3-mile-long Rohtang Tunnel to bypass the Rohtang Pass. This will have the advantage of keeping the road open year-round and cutting 60 kilometers and about 6 hours off the journey to Leh. You need a sense of adventure to enjoy this passage into Ladakh, as the road can be rough, muddy, and crowded with vehicles. We reached the top of the pass at 13,051 feet and paused just long enough to grab a photo before beginning our descent down the other side, where the road becomes a morass of dirt, mud, and rocks all the way down. Yeah. Oh, a bit of a rock in the road there. Well. Nasty little rock. Okay.
माउंटेन ड्यू डर के आगे जीत है.
Little mountain mud here.
बारिश हो गया थी नहीं चढ़ेगी यहाँ से गाड़ियाँ. बारिश हो गई एक बार नहीं गाड़ियाँ चढ़ेगी. किस पास चुकी है? हाँ चुकी है. मैं भी ले चलूँगा ना. Oh my God.
That's a bit rough.
You risky job, driver. Oh.
The traffic trying to cross the pass from the other side is at a standstill as we work our way down the mountain on what has become essentially a one-way road. What a bloody mess.
जय भोले दे पुजारियों गड्डी कट दो.
This side of the pass is tedious and exhausting, and you are so relieved to reach your humble abode for the night, so the jarring, bouncing ride can end. We stayed 2 nights in Jispa at 10,500 feet to acclimate and rest up for the 10-hour ride into Leh, our home for the next 2 nights. After reading these road signs, we're glad we made it to Jispa. Good news! Starbucks in Jispa. While in Jispa, we drove to the nearby village of Tanu. The village is across the river, and a long, winding road snakes down to the river, to the village on the other side. Tanu is busy with activity and friendly people. Fodder for the animals is stored on the roofs to feed them during the long winters. The ladder to the roof looks precarious enough to climb, but with a big bundle of hay on your back, you need to be especially sure-footed. The people of the village were warm and welcoming. The last of the crops were being harvested, for soon it will be winter, and the cold, snow, and frozen fields will last for about 6 months until the spring thaw. More doors to photograph. On a cliff overlooking the village was a tiny monastery. The room carved out of the cliff was barely large enough for a small altar and 2 or 3 people at one time. A peaceful and contemplative place to spend some quiet moments, thinking about what this place means for the people of this village. As I made my way down the steep path to the car, an older woman was ascending the path. She told me that she climbs the path to the monastery every day. We left our hotel early in the morning to drive the 330 kilometers from Jispa to Leh. That is about 250 miles. It does not sound all that far if you're driving on the freeways in America, but this is the Himalayas of India. and the road is slow and winding and sometimes turns into a stream bed. Only 250 more kilometers to go. We settle in for the long drive and only stop a few times for necessary breaks and for photos at the high passes. 3 major passes must be crossed on the road to Leh, which involves a lot of climbing and descending. The third pass that we crossed is the second highest drivable pass in the world at 17,582 feet. As the sign says, unbelievable, is it not? Our lunch break and potty stop were both a bit rustic, but they had great views. We get back on the road again after lunch and stop a few more times for photographs. After a few more hours on the road, we arrive in Leh, tired and dusty and ready for the hotel. Tomorrow is a new day of adventure as we explore Leh. Ladakh was closed to the outside world between 1948 and 1974 because of the ongoing dispute with China and Pakistan over who should control Kashmir. Control of Kashmir territory is divided between India, China, and Pakistan. Each country controls the portion of Kashmir closest to them. Ladakh is in the area controlled by India. India maintains a strong military presence in Ladakh, as border skirmishes between the countries are not uncommon. We first traveled to Ladakh in 1979 and fell in love with the region. Leh was a small village with cultivated fields right outside the door of the only good hotel in town. We were able to easily find people at work in the fields and photograph them while they worked. We returned many years later in 2013 and saw that Leh was a bustling town that had grown in all directions so that we hardly recognized it. Gone were the nearby fields of grain, and vehicles of all descriptions filled the narrow streets. The streets were crowded with people and vendors, with the population more than tripling since 1974. Leh Palace was built in the 17th century and served as the home of the royal family until the middle of the 19th century. The royal family then moved to Stoke Palace, 15 kilometers south of Leh. Leh Palace is 9 stories high, and its architecture is modeled after Lhasa's Potala Palace. A major restoration project has been underway at the Leh Palace for several years, but it remains open to the public. To see the land we had fallen in love with in 1979, we had to visit villages that were further into the countryside. Nearby villages such as Nemo have managed to keep some of their rural charm. Machine grain threshers have replaced animals, but much of the work of cutting and bundling the grain is still done by hand. In Nemo, families were bringing in the wheat harvest together, a hard but rewarding task that is made easier by everyone pitching in to get the task done. Potatoes were also being harvested near Leh. The plow is used to turn the soil and reveal the potatoes to be gathered and sorted to be stored for winter. In Stoke Village, we asked permission to see a water-powered flour mill at work. Ancient technology that does not require any electricity. Here we also saw burros and people, hard at work, moving the bundles of wheat from the fields to the threshing area. One morning as we were on our way out of Leh, the main street was closed for the 6th Ladakhi Marathon. Marathon at this elevation? It's hard to walk, let alone run, at 11,562 feet. These runners must really be fit. Lovely ladies with bouquets of flowers, dressed in traditional Ladakhi clothing, were waiting for the bus to take them to the finish line, where they could greet the winners. Signs set up along the racecourse must have been for the spectators' amusement. If a marathon isn't enough of a challenge, runners could compete in the ultramarathon of 72 kilometers over the 17,582-foot Kardangla Path. We couldn't stay for the fun since we were headed out of Leh to find an old friend, as we had for our last 2 visits to Leh. I remember very well the lady that invited us into the fields behind the family home in 2013, so we could take photos of the family cutting and stacking the bundles of wheat. In 2014, I had given a small gift to the lady who had leaned out of her window, a smile on her face, to let us know we were welcome. I had given her the photo that I had taken in 2013. We wanted to stop in again in 2016, just to say hello. I saw her shoes by the back door, and took this photo that to me represents the old Ladakh and the disappearing traditions of this land and its people. In 2014, we located a young girl Tom had photographed the year before, playing on an improvised teeter-totter. She was attending a class at a nearby school when we found her. Tom presented her with the digital painting he had done from his photograph. I think you could say she was surprised. A very important aspect of life in Ladakh is the strong influence of the Buddhist religion over the life of the people. The rugged land of Ladakh is dotted with many monasteries, as the majority of its population practice Tibetan Buddhism. Buddhism first came to Ladakh in the 3rd century BC from India, but over the centuries monks from Ladakh went to study in neighboring Tibet. Ladakh has embraced thousands of Tibetan refugees who escaped after the invasion of Tibet by China in 1959. Tibetan Buddhism is an important part of the culture of this ancient land. The monasteries cling to hillsides above the valley floor or are built on solitary hilltops in the valleys. They contain old scriptures, tankas, murals, and other relics. A tanka is a religious painting that represents the life of Buddha or many bodhisattvas. Most tankas are scroll paintings, usually framed in a rich, colorful silk brocade. They are distinctively Tibetan, highly religious, and possess a unique art style of their own. Sacred Buddhist books, are handwritten and stored on long shelves in the monastery and are read from during morning prayers. There are over 300 of these texts. Monks often chant in unison while cymbals, bells, horns, and drums produce an odd calliope of sounds during the morning prayers. We were lucky enough to arrive at prayer time in one of these monasteries and were allowed to stay and watch and listen. The Buddhists of Ladakh regard His Holiness the Dalai Lama as their supreme spiritual leader and as the living incarnation of Buddha. His Holiness had been in Ladakh to dedicate a new statue of Buddha the month before we arrived. We were there to witness preparations for a ceremony to open the worship hall under the statue to the public. Monks outside of the worship hall prepare decorations made from butter for the ceremony. A gumpa is a community where spiritual monks and nuns live and practice their religion. Gumpas in Ladakh are also educational centers and play a significant role in the local villages. There is a gumpa in almost every village, and normally they are located at the highest point. Chortens and stupas built near monasteries are normally made to remember a Buddhist monk or religious leader. Mani walls are often built near chortans, temples, and roadsides. They are made from stones inscribed with a prayer, Mani Padme which is loosely translated into English as the jewel in the heart of the lotus. These walls should be passed or circumvented from the left side of the wall according to Buddhist tradition. Along with Mani walls, prayer flags can be seen blowing in the wind all over Ladakh, always in high places and near monasteries. They come in long rolls with the flags in 5 different primary colors. The 5 colors represent the 5 elements and are arranged from left to right in a specific order. Blue is the sky and space, white is the air and wind, red is for fire, green is water, and yellow the earth. Ladakhis believe the prayers and mantras printed on the flags will be blown by the wind to spread goodwill and compassion, bringing benefit to all. Our journeys to Ladakh in 2014 and 2016 took us beyond Leh to some of the most remote areas of Ladakh accessible by car, the Zanskar Valley. We made friends in 2014 that we revisited in 2016. We plan to visit once more next year to continue the journey, but that's another story.